You know that feeling when someone gets a little too close and suddenly you pull away? Not dramatically, not cruelly, just enough to keep things safe, just enough to avoid being fully seen. You might keep the conversation light, make a joke, switch the subject, or maybe even ghost for a few days and tell yourself you're just busy. But deep down, there's this whisper. Why does closeness feel so uncomfortable? And maybe now, you're tired of that. Tired of the push and pull. Tired of building half relationships that never really go anywhere. Tired of feeling like you're watching connection happen from behind glass. Today, we're talking about something a lot of people silently struggle with. How to stop being emotionally unavailable and finally build real, lasting connection in your relationships. This video isn't about blame. It's about awareness. And it's about healing. Welcome back to Psych Bites, where we talk about the psychology of love, connection, and becoming emotionally available, not just to others, but to yourself. Because here's the thing that rarely gets talked about. Emotional unavailability doesn't make you broken. It makes you human. It's a learned pattern, usually a protective one, that helped you survive a time when being vulnerable wasn't safe. But now, you want more. And wanting more is powerful. Maybe you're realizing that you've been emotionally unavailable in your relationships, that you've kept people at arm's length, that you've struggled to open up or felt numb when you were supposed to feel close. And maybe, just maybe, you're ready to change that. If so, this video is for you. We're going to explore what emotional unavailability really is, from the inside, how it develops, why it feels safer to detach than to lean in, and most importantly, how to begin dismantling those protective walls, slowly, gently, and in a way that honors your nervous system. Because emotional connection isn't something you fake your way into. It's something you learn to allow. And that's exactly what we're here to do, together. Let's begin. So let's pause for a second and really talk about what emotional unavailability feels like. From the inside, it doesn't always look cold or distant. Sometimes it looks like charm, like being the person who always knows how to keep things light and easy. It looks like saying, I just go with the flow when someone asks where things are going. It looks like being busy, distracted, independent, low drama. But underneath all of that, there's a subtle sense of detachment, a discomfort with depth. Emotionally unavailable people often don't even realize they're emotionally unavailable. They think they're just not ready, or not feeling it, or bad at relationships. But the truth is, they've become really good at protecting themselves from vulnerability. So good that it feels normal. It feels like just being careful, like not wanting to move too fast, like needing space. But what's really happening beneath the surface is something much deeper, and usually much older. Emotional unavailability is often the result of early experiences where expressing needs, emotions, or vulnerability was met with rejection, invalidation, chaos, or even punishment. So the brain does what it does best. It adapts. It learns to turn down the emotional volume. It builds walls, subtle ones, to keep everything and everyone at a manageable distance. The nervous system gets wired to see emotional closeness as danger. It feels like losing control, like exposure, like weakness. So as an adult, you might crave connection and intimacy and feel panicked by it at the same time. You might feel safer in the honeymoon phase when things are new and fun and low stakes. But the moment someone starts getting close, you emotionally shut down, or distract, or leave. It's not because you don't feel. It's because you've trained yourself to hide what you feel before anyone else can hurt it. Maybe you've noticed that you feel overwhelmed when someone expresses love, or you don't know how to respond when someone asks what you need. Maybe your emotions feel dulled, not because you don't have them, but because you've never had space to express them safely. And that's what emotional unavailability looks like on the inside. It's not heartlessness. It's not manipulation. It's often quiet grief, emotional self-protection, and deep, deep fear of being truly seen. But here's the thing. Your emotional walls were built for a reason. they kept you safe once. But maybe now they're just keeping you lonely. And the good news? Walls can come down. Slowly, thoughtfully, with the right tools and the right kind of self-kindness. So let's talk about how to do that next. Because learning how to reconnect isn't just possible. It's one of the most powerful things you'll ever do for yourself and for the people you love. Now there's a moment. There always is. And if you're here watching this, maybe you've already had it, where you stop blaming your past, stop denying your patterns, and you start asking a different question. What if I could show up differently? That's the turning point. It's not loud or dramatic. It's quiet, personal. It's the moment you realize your emotional detachment hasn't just protected you, it's also cost you. It's cost you intimacy, joy, security, the chance to be truly known. And yet, it's not about shame. It's not about beating yourself up for the relationships you couldn't fully participate in or the people you unintentionally hurt along the way. Emotional unavailability isn't a character flaw. It's a response, a coping strategy that made perfect sense when connection felt unsafe or unpredictable. So of course you built walls. Of course you relied on detachment. Of course you avoided the messy, vulnerable stuff. But survival is different from living. And once you've tasted even a little bit of what true connection feels like, being loved for your real, imperfect self, it becomes impossible to go back to hiding forever. That's when you stop asking, why am I like this? And start asking, what can I do now? This is when the real work begins. Not to fix yourself, but to reclaim yourself, your emotional life, your inner landscape, your capacity to feel, to share, to connect without shutting down. And here's the truth no one really talks about. You can learn to be emotionally available. It's not something only certain people are born with. It's a skill, a practice, a reconditioning of your nervous system and your mindset. It starts with awareness, yes, but it grows through action, through choosing to stay, choosing to feel, choosing to speak even when your voice shakes. This is where you stop waiting for the right person to pull the real you out and start becoming that person for yourself. The one who's willing to sit in discomfort, to be seen, to be honest, not perfectly, not instantly, but steadily, gently. Emotional availability isn't a destination. It's a choice you make over and over again. I'm going to show up, even though it's scary, even though I don't know how this will go. I'm going to be here, fully. Because you deserve to love and be loved, not from behind a wall, not through half-closed doors, but out in the open. And you don't have to wait until you're healed to start practicing that. You just have to start where you are. And that starts right now. Let's talk about how to begin that journey, step by step. Change doesn't begin with action. It begins with awareness. And for someone learning to become emotionally available, this is where it all starts. Noticing yourself in real time. Noticing how you avoid, deflect, change the subject. Noticing that subtle clench in your chest when someone asks how you're really doing. That little voice in your head that says, don't go there, keep it light, keep it safe. This awareness isn't about judgment. It's about curiosity. That's why journaling can be such a powerful first step. It gives you space to explore your inner world without pressure. Ask yourself things like, what am I afraid of when it comes to closeness? What do I usually do when someone wants to get emotionally close to me? When was the last time I shut down, and why? The goal isn't to fix anything, it's just to see. Therapy can deepen this awareness even further. A skilled therapist doesn't just give you tools, they hold up a mirror. They help you spot your patterns, your triggers, and the early wounds that may have taught you to stay emotionally distant in the first place. You can also start noticing your deflections in everyday conversations. Do you make a joke when things get serious? Change the subject when someone asks about your past? Shrug off compliments or affection? These moments are little road signs pointing toward the areas you've unconsciously guarded. And they're not failures, they're opportunities. Little invitations to pause and ask yourself, What would happen if I stayed present here instead of backing away? Awareness is uncomfortable at first. It reveals the emotional armor you've been wearing, sometimes for years. But it's also liberating, because the more you notice, the more choice you begin to have. And that's how change begins, not by forcing yourself to feel things you're not ready for, but by gently, honestly, seeing what's been getting in the way. Here's one of the biggest truths about emotional unavailability. It's not the emotion itself that's the problem. It's the discomfort that comes with it. Most emotionally unavailable people aren't trying to avoid love. They're trying to avoid the overwhelm that love can bring. Vulnerability feels unsafe. Intimacy feels intense. And that discomfort, it's what sends them running. That's why learning to regulate your emotional responses is absolutely foundational. You don't need to become unbreakable. You just need to become more resilient. You need to know, I can feel this, and I'll be okay. Start with your body. Emotions aren't just thoughts, they're physical. When you feel the urge to shut down, to lash out, or to disappear, pause. Notice what your body is doing. Is your chest tight? Are your fists clenched? Is your breath shallow? Now breathe. One of the simplest tools is the 4-7-8 breathing method. Breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 7, exhale for 8. This slows your heart rate, calms your nervous system, and signals to your brain, we are safe. This creates space between stimulus and response, space where you can choose to stay emotionally present rather than reacting out of fear. Over time, this emotional regulation helps rewire your relationship with vulnerability. Instead of seeing it as a threat, your brain starts to see it as survivable, and eventually, even meaningful. When someone says something that hits deep, don't run from it. Sit with it. Feel your discomfort. Let it move through your body like a wave, knowing it won't drown you. It's just information, just emotion. And when you learn to stay with it rather than escape it, something incredible happens. You become safer inside yourself. And only from that safety can true connection begin. For someone who spent years avoiding emotional depth, learning to communicate honestly feels terrifying. You might worry about saying the wrong thing, about being too much, about being seen too clearly. But here's the truth. Honest communication is messy, and that's okay. You don't have to say the perfect thing. You just have to start saying the true thing. The next time someone asks how you're feeling and your instinct is to say, I'm fine, try pausing. Then say something like, this is hard for me to say, but I'm trying to be more open. Even that level of honesty is powerful. Honest communication doesn't mean spilling your soul on the first try. It means creating micro moments of truth, tiny windows where you let someone in just a little, where you resist the urge to hide behind humor or distance or silence. Start small. Start with safe people. And most importantly, give yourself permission to be awkward. Emotional availability doesn't look like a perfect TED Talk. It looks like stammering, like rewording, like saying, I don't know what I need right now, but I want to figure it out. And when you start speaking your truth, something else begins to shift. The people around you feel it. They soften. They open. And suddenly, connection becomes possible. Not because you've mastered communication, but because you've finally stopped hiding. So let yourself speak, even if your voice trembles. It's not about being eloquent. It's about being real. Before you can let anyone into your emotional world, you first have to get reacquainted with it yourself. That may sound simple, but for emotionally unavailable people, even identifying what you're feeling can feel like trying to tune into a distant radio station. You know something's there, but it's fuzzy, hard to name, and easier to ignore. Here's the truth. You can't share what you haven't first allowed yourself to feel. An emotional connection begins within. That means learning to sit with your own joy, sadness, shame, disappointment, fear, all without pushing them away or numbing them out. Try asking yourself each day, what am I feeling right now? Not what you're thinking, not what's on your to-do list, what you're actually feeling. You might start with broad strokes: tired, numb, tense. Then go deeper. Is the tiredness physical or emotional? Is the numbness a sign of feeling overwhelmed? Is the tension about something unspoken? Journaling helps. So does just sitting quietly for 5 minutes with no distraction and noticing what bubbles up. The more you do this, the more fluent you become in your own emotional language. You stop being a stranger to yourself. Because here's the thing. People who are emotionally unavailable often don't mean to be evasive. They've just lost touch with their own inner experience. They don't know what to say because they haven't been listening inside long enough to have an answer. But once you start reconnecting with your own emotions, naming them, honoring them, not judging them, you begin to build a new relationship with yourself. One that's honest, one that's open, and that becomes the foundation for emotional availability with others. Real connection begins with inner connection. So before you worry about opening up, make sure you're actually home in your own heart first. Once you've begun to reconnect with yourself emotionally, the next step is learning how to share those emotions with others. But let's be real, vulnerability can feel terrifying, especially if you've been burned before. If you've had your openness punished, dismissed, or ignored in the past, your nervous system may still associate vulnerability with danger. That's why practicing safe vulnerability is key. Vulnerability doesn't mean dumping your life story onto the first person who listens. It means testing the waters with small truths and seeing how they're received. It means starting with people who've shown themselves to be kind, consistent, and emotionally attuned. The kind of people who don't flinch when you're real. Maybe it's a friend you trust. Maybe it's a partner who's been asking to know you more deeply. Maybe it's a therapist. The who matters less than the how. You start with something small. I've been feeling a little disconnected lately. Or, it's hard for me to talk about this, but I want to try. You see how they respond. Do they lean in, stay present, hold space? Or do they dismiss it, change the subject, make it about themselves? Safe people make vulnerability feel lighter, not heavier. They don't rescue you, but they respect your emotional honesty. And the more you experience that kind of safety, the more your brain begins to rewire its understanding of closeness. Vulnerability stops feeling like a risk. It starts feeling like relief. Bit by bit, you open up more. Bit by bit, your emotional muscles strengthen. You stop bracing for rejection every time you share a feeling. And slowly, you learn that being known doesn't mean being exposed. It means being held. You don't have to bare your soul all at once, but you do have to start somewhere. And if you choose the right people, you'll be amazed at how healing it is to be truly seen and still accepted. One of the most heartbreaking effects of emotional unavailability is that it quietly erodes trust, not just in others, but in yourself. You begin to doubt your emotional instincts. You second-guess your own feelings. You stop trusting that love can last or that you won't mess it up, and so you pull back. You stay safe. But emotional availability requires trust, and rebuilding that trust takes time, compassion, and consistency. Let's start with you. Rebuilding trust in yourself means learning to listen to your inner world without minimizing or ignoring it. When you feel sad, acknowledge it. When you feel joy, let yourself feel it fully. When you feel afraid, don't shut it down. Your emotions are messages, not threats. And the more consistently you listen to yourself, the more you start to trust your emotional compass again. Now let's talk about trust in others. This is where many emotionally unavailable people hesitate. Because trust means letting go of control. It means risking disappointment. But here's where the shift happens. Instead of asking, "Can I trust this person to never hurt me?" Ask, "Has this person shown me emotional consistency over time?" Trust isn't built in grand gestures. It's built in the little things. Texts followed up, promises kept, emotions respected. It's built when someone listens without trying to fix, when they show up even when things aren't easy, when their care feels stable, not performative. Let their consistency speak louder than your fear. And the more you engage with trustworthy people and show up consistently for them in return, the more your body starts to feel safe in connection. You stop bracing for the worst. You start relaxing into emotional presence. And eventually you realize, I'm not just surviving intimacy anymore, I'm living in it. Rebuilding trust is the final stretch in healing emotional unavailability. And it's the piece that makes deep, lasting connection not only possible, but natural. So here we are. If you've made it to this point, I want you to take a second to let that sink in. This journey, back to emotional presence, back to intimacy, back to yourself, it's not easy. It asks a lot. It asks you to unlearn things that once kept you safe, to let go of walls that have protected you for years, to feel things you'd long tucked away, and most of all, to show up, even when it's messy, even when you're scared, even when your voice shakes. But here's the truth. The fact that you're even trying means you're already doing the work. Because healing emotional unavailability isn't about flipping a switch. It's not about becoming suddenly emotionally fluent or fearless. It's about choosing, again and again, to stay present, to tell the truth, to feel, even when feeling hurts, and to keep the door open to real connection, even when every instinct says to slam it shut. It's about becoming emotionally available to yourself first, listening to your own needs, honoring your own story, learning to trust your own emotions, not because they're always easy, but because they're yours. And then, from that inner honesty, beginning to let others in. You might not get it right every time. You'll still want to shut down sometimes. That's okay. What matters isn't perfection, it's intention. It's that you're no longer sleepwalking through your relationships, numbing out, drifting away. You're waking up, you're showing up, and you're choosing to love more fully, more bravely than you have before. And isn't that what we're all really after? Not just being loved, but being seen and still loved. Not just existing next to someone, but feeling with them. That's emotional availability. That's intimacy. That's the kind of connection that doesn't just fill space, it fills you. And if part of you is still wondering, why has emotional closeness always felt so hard for me? You're not alone. Sometimes the roots run deeper than just habits. Sometimes they trace back to patterns of attachment and pain we've carried since childhood, especially when we found ourselves stuck in unhealthy, even toxic dynamics. Which is why, if this resonated with you, you might want to check out our video on trauma bonding. Here's why you stay in a toxic relationship, Trauma Bonding Decoded. Because understanding why we attach to people who keep us emotionally distant is just as important as learning how to stop doing it. Thank you for watching, for reflecting, and for doing this work. You deserve love that meets you fully, and more than anything, you deserve to meet yourself all the way. Don't forget to subscribe to Psych Bites for more deep dives into psychology, attraction, and relationships. See you in the next one.